normal activities, both our individual private lives and in the service of the plan. I remember the Baha'is talking about a couple of years ago about the importance of study leading to action. And someone made the gaffe that, like, studying dawnbreakers doesn't lead to action, so that wouldn't be something we could study. And it seems to me that this level of study is what actually activates us to dedicate and sacrifice ourselves in a whole range of services. Maybe it doesn't result in our going down and cleaning the park, but that's an element that's there, all right, that's all right. But the motivation behind everything we do comes from the Holy Writings. And the more that we absorb these divine verses and they become the animating factor of our existence, the more we become our own true selves. You know, he says that potentially every soul has a destiny, a fixed destiny. It isn't that you're, chasing around trying to find one. It's there in you. It's part of your creation. It's part of your spiritual DNA, if you will. Getting to it is a struggle. And all the things we're going through and we're talking about is to move us towards that reality. My light is in thee, get thou from its radiance is kind of the mandate, the whole business. How to move away from the lower self, from the busy self, from the... Still we have to carry on our responsibilities and carry the load that life has given us to carry. That's there too. But we want to elevate it. There's, I think it was one of the saints in France that said, you can either hull the peas in the shade or in the sunlight. We've got things we can do, but we should do it in the presence of Baha'u'llah. How do we move from here to there, so to speak? And how do we do that in such a way that everything we do touches people around us? Because we have the Master's example in the story of his life and the episodes of his service. It gives us ideas in that direction. There's a kind of a conundrum we say, on the one hand we say that we all have been created by God. We're all potentially mirrors of all the names and attributes of God. And on the other hand, we're all unique and different from each other. So how can we all be the same and all be different at the same time? The way that I viewed this is like, just for the sake of example, would be like if you had a pie and you divided the names and attributes of God into different proportions. All of them are there, but in each pie the cut is different. So you have a set of attributes and you have a dominant name of God that is a factor in your reality. Abdu'l-Baha explains this in the tablet that he writes when he was a teenager about the meaning of the hidden treasure. And he's asked, he said, how is it that these terrific mystics, these divine mystics with their insights all have a different idea about God? And he said that this is the result of the dominant name of God in their character. So, spinning off of that, Ruhi Khanum wrote this play called the Growing Pains of Spiritual Assembly, years ago. I don't know if you've seen that. It's quite interesting. And I can't remember the exact character of the players, but the point is there was Mrs. Mercy and Mr. Justice and Dr. Wisdom, and these are the characters on the local assembly. No matter what the issue that comes up, they view it through that principal name of theirs. So so-and-so's made a mistake, and we say, well, one of them is going to always say we have to be merciful and forgiving, we have to be raising, educating the friends, and another says if we don't keep discipline and we don't punish, then there's no form to the community, And somehow God and Baha'u'llah puts up with those different points of views and creates in an assembly, seems like 9 is enough to pull it off, we get something moderate and reflective of various names of God, whatever the combination is.
Sometimes.
This is a, this is consultation. I mean, it should be the result of consultation. And if the friends really are reflecting these names of God and not just reflecting their own personal prejudices and opinions, which is something we want to be watching in ourselves, you know. So okay, so if there's a primary name of God, then if we're all different, there's probably a secondary and a tertiary principal names. So we're getting a whole different combination of these. And you know, one of the things that struck me is that, of course, Abdu'l-Baha says we should become incarnate light, but he also talks about light. The light is pure, but it shines in a lamp. Depending on the color of the lamp, it shines that way. So also with those, it shines with those attributes, divine qualities that are your essential nature, or his essential nature, or her essential nature. Endless facets revealing to us something about the Maker. So in other words, we come to know God, yes, in our own selves, but we also come to know God by qualities we see in those around us, and we're attracted to that. And the idea that we address that in the teaching work, that we address the inner reality of the people. We know it's there. Abdu'l-Baha, the last evening that Corinne True and her daughters were in Haifa in 1909, as they were leaving, he said to her, he said, "You must view every soul that you meet as a letter, a message from your beloved." And he said, it doesn't matter if the envelope it's coming in is soiled or ripped or has tea spilled on it or is dirty, smelly, whatever it is, because the message from your beloved is in it, it's precious to you. And you have to look beyond the envelope to the inner message that's there. Now we say, in theory, well, everybody's been made by God, everybody's been created by God. Abdu'l-Baha tells us if we see shortcomings in people, we should think of that in terms of children that haven't grown up yet. Sometimes we have a hard time transferring that to somebody who's annoying us, who seems to be perfectly adult in every other way except with their annoying qualities. How do we get beyond that? We have to recognize that there is something there for us. Now you think of the person that you dislike the most in the world. Can you find a way to address in yourself the quality, that something in that person? Or pray that it might awaken in you? You have somebody who annoys you. Okay, we pray, help me to see something in this person which will enable me to transcend this annoyance. This annoyance is not good for me, it's not good for the other soul. My wife always says, pray for those people. Because if you're praying for them, it's hard to dislike them. She also says it's not a good idea to tell them that you're praying for them. Now, in one of the tablets of Baha'u'llah, he talks about life after death. He says that after the faithful friends, the true friends, when they go to the next world, they will be ushered into the company of the prophets and messengers of God, who will inquire of them of that which they have suffered in the way of God, in the path of God. Now, friends, a lot of you have suffered a lot. You'll have something to talk about. If you haven't had much to talk about, it may be a very short interview. I had a jolly good life, thank you very much. Next, I don't know how that's going to... But right after that, Baha'u'llah says one of the occupations in the next world is to witness the reality of every sanctified soul. Extraordinary phrase. We will want to witness the reality of every sanctified soul. In other words, those souls that have transcended the limitations of their lower selves, of their ego and of their acquired attributes, all this mess that we collect all our lives, acquired knowledge, transcended that, and are a reflection of this innate combination of divine lights and splendors that is our true reality, the true self. And when we see that, it communicates something to us about God that we wouldn't get anywhere else. So never think of yourself as such a small little cog in the machine that you don't count. And we have to give this reality to young people too, that there's something in them as that develops that has eternal value and will communicate some facet of God's wonder to other souls. Don't lose track of that, and remember that's what the goal is. Now at the same time we have to be trying to awaken others. Abdu'l-Baha says, how can the poor give to the poor? And he talks about the importance of studying the writings. Baha'u'llah, of course, talks about immersing ourselves in the ocean of his verses, of his words, so that they become we take on this true nature, we awaken that true nature, we nurture it, and then protect ourselves through the set of laws and ordinances and the strict observance of them. That's the safeguard, to know that these seeds will develop in all their potentiality within us, and to nurture others, encourage them, realize that God is forgiving of everything, as we talked about yesterday. It's so important for us to, some of us, we trip, we want to play God with ourselves. We say, if I was God, I would never forgive that thing I did when I was 25 years old or something. But I'm not worthy to teach the faith. Of course you're not. Who is, But one has to let God be the ever-forgiving, the all-forgiving, in every aspect of our beings. We need to be contrite, we need to repent of things, we need to recognize our own lowliness, yes. How many times in the prayers it says, this worthless servant. Actually, servant in the original, in Arabic, is slave. We are the slaves of God. Actually, we belong to Him. He tells us, He made us. He has a plan. We're busy with our own lives trying to create a new civilization which is not His civilization. A different way of society. We're trying to loosen all the edges so everybody can have fun. God help us. Really, it's taken the world off into a mirage, into a way of thinking about life, into a way of discarding religion entirely. This is why go back to read, especially the last 30, 40 pages of this book, A Promised Day Has Come, to get the vision that Shoghi gives us of what's happening to society, and to adjust our outlook and judgment of it. This terrific gift from God, really, the Haykal. Many of Baha'u'llah's tablets are addressed to individuals. They're in the name of one or another of the friends. This one is not. This is a general tablet. It's what's come forth to Baha'u'llah at the very beginning of this proclamation. I want to read you the quotation. This is a provisional translation of something that hasn't been published yet. He says, the addresser, this is with relation to who's speaking to whom in this tablet. The addresser and the addressee are one, which is mine own self, who ruleth over all the worlds. And again, in another, as for the addressee in the Haykal, this is the outward aspect of his most holy temple. He, exalted be his majesty, at times addresseth the outward aspect of his temple with the tongue of its inner aspect. And another time doth the reverse. Thus did I hear, this is Aga Jan's report, thus did I hear with mine own ears while present before the throne, in the company of others who likewise heard it. So this again is this, if you will, a kind of a divine theater that Baha'u'llah is presented with these various voices speaking, in which he then expands our understanding of his position, of the station of the manifestation, to the degree that we're able to comprehend it. Dear Ghaneh yesterday was talking about the rivers, these different modes which relate to the modes that we were talking about of the Bab's writings, the water and the what is it, the wine, the milk and the wine and the honey. And in the Bab's writings he says these flow from the throne of God, the base of the throne of God. They flow out in the heavenly realm. But he adds something interesting. The Bab says, and that throne is my heart. He is the reality from which all of these different gifts from God flow out. And it's the same, of course, in the heart of the manifestation of Baha'u'llah, the same way. All right. Do you remember we were talking about angels a bit yesterday? There's this quote from the Ghaneh. He says, by angels is meant those who, reinforced by the power of the Spirit, have consumed with the fire of the love of God all human traits and limitations, and have clothed themselves with the attributes of the most exalted beings and of the cherubim. This is our goal, friends, is this question of transforming our lower character, allowing the higher character to dawn in it, lifting the veils. And everything in the prayer book is about that. The prayers and meditations particularly, I think, is so many different places, talks about it. Ignite, O my God, within my breast the fire of thy love, that its flame may burn up all else except my remembrance of thee, that every trace of corrupt desire may be entirely mortified within me, and that naught may remain except the glorification of thy transcendent and all-glorious being. One paragraph sums up what we're about. And the main, I think the main divine tool, the prop that God has given us, is the hidden words. And there are wonderful things in the writings from Abdu'l-Baha about the hidden words and the importance of memorizing the hidden words and of studying them every day, having them close by. Because this is the essence of what the teachings of the prophets all down through the ages has been. Gradually the interaction in our study of those things, one will throw light on another, and we'll come to more greatly appreciate it. I remember somebody saying, if you don't feel like praying, what will you do about it? It's not God's fault if you don't feel like praying, it's something else. Bill Sears used to say to their friends, he said, if you don't feel close to God as you used to, who moved? So reflect back on our own actions. All right, moving on to the text here. Unless you have some comments or questions at this point, somebody want to say anything? Seem to all be awake. Where are we? What paragraph are we now? Let's see. 50 what? 56, did you say, somebody?
Yeah, that sounds right to me. Okay. We'll start here.
I don't think we can ever repeat any of this too much, so if we do read something twice, it'll be all right. Moving forward, let's see if we can make a run with the text and just highlight particular points here in our study this morning. 46? So, the one that said 46 was busy meditating after that, no doubt. Missed some of it. Okay, the very words and deeds of these men. Will someone start with that, please?
The very words and deeds of these men bear eloquent testimony to the truth of my words. If ye be of them the judge with fairness. Whosoever attributeth the verses of God to sorcery hath not believed in any of his messengers, hath lived and labored in vain, and is accounted of those who speak that which they have no knowledge. Say, O servant, fear God, thy Creator and thy Fashioner, and transgress not against him, but judge with fairness and act with justice. Those whom the Lord hath endued with knowledge shall find in the very objections raised by the unbelievers conclusive proofs to invalidate their claims and vindicate the truth of this manifest light. Say, would ye repeat that which the unbelievers uttered when a message came unto them from their Lord? Woe betide you, O assemblage of foolish ones, and blighted be your works.
The objections raised by the unbelievers become proofs to those who are seeking truth. How they repeat themselves over the ages, this same pattern, you know. We have it projected back in the Adamic cycle, and we see it in the Ghaneh, where he talks about a number of messengers who came and their message was rejected and these people were destroyed, and we move on to another one. Obviously this has been going on for eternity. We have a little local view of a period of it. You know, constantly Shoghi talks about this is the greatest light in the known religious history of mankind. Once we go behind Adam, or before Adam, okay, there's a whole other history that we don't know much about it. And Baha'u'llah says because they didn't have a style of writing that we're familiar with, so we're missing out on it. Plus it's long, and we don't know what the future is going to bring either. Once we go to new stages of unity in the universe. So that learning these patterns helps us to ground ourselves, if you will, in the manifest light of the revelation of the prophet of our time. You can only imagine how history is going to have to be rewritten once the Egon is absorbed. I mean, we have a history written from a materialistic outlook, completely irrespective of the station of the manifestations of God. And of course we have a view of the past religions colored by the followers of it, not just by the revelation itself, but by the followers of that religion. So we don't always realize that it's all the same light that's coming over and over again and manifests in different ways. We know it produces us, each revelation has produced this magnificent civilizations. I mean, perhaps they're most obvious from the point of view of science and of architecture and art is Islam. But also we have the Indian civilizations based on Hinduism and Buddhism. Such gorgeous developments. We're so early, we just have the first glimmerings in this formative age of what the Baha'i spirit of Baha'u'llah is going to produce. You see how it just gradually is dawning. He says the sun of his revelation can't go to the zenith in terms of history without burning us all up. It has to come very, very gradually. And of course the gradual is how much of us are receptive and absorbing it and transforming our lives and becoming the instruments of its intention. O ancient beauty, friends, please.
O ancient beauty, turn aside from the unbelievers and that which they possess, and waft over all created things the sweet savors of the remembrance of thy beloved, exalted the great. This remembrance quickeneth the world of being, and reneweth temples of all created things. Say, he verily hath established himself upon the throne of might and glory. Whosoever desires to gaze on his countenance, lo, behold him standing before thee. Blessed be the Lord who hath revealed himself in this shining and luminous beauty. Whosoever desireth to hearken unto his melodies, lo, hear them rising from his resplendent and wondrous lips. And unto whatsoever desireth to be illumined by the splendors of his light, say, seek the court of his presence, for God hath verily granted you leave to approach him as a token of his grace unto all mankind. Say, O people, we shall put to you a question in all truthfulness, taking God for a witness between you and us. Verily, he is the defender of the righteous. Appear then before his throne of glory, and make reply with justice and fair-mindedness. Is it God who is potent to achieve his purpose, or is it ye who enjoy such authority? Is it he who is truly unconstrained, as ye imply, when ye say that he doeth what he pleaseth, and shall not be asked of his doings? Or is it ye who wield such power, and who merely make such assertions out of blind imitation, as did your forebears at the appearance of every other messenger of God?
Friends, there's a challenge here. Whosoever desireth to gaze upon his countenance, lo, behold him standing before thee. Almost as if we should, in the privacy of our prayers, ask Baha'u'llah, help me to see these words fulfilled in my own being. Help me to approach this presence and to see, hearken to these melodies. Seek the court of his presence, for God hath verily granted you leave to approach it. My God. Then this other challenge, he says, question he's put there. Very interesting, that paragraph too. How often do we meditate? You know, Shoghi Effendi, I think I mentioned this, he said in one of his letters, he says prayer and meditation are two different activities. I think they're oftentimes going on simultaneously, because obviously when we're reading a prayer, we're also thinking of the meanings of it. In fact, sometimes we lose our way in the prayer. You know, I say, well, I was reading the prayer, now I've gone off thinking about some aspect of it. But we need to think about the meaning of we question ourselves about the meanings of, again, our outer being questions our inner being. What's this all about? How can I understand this? He doeth what he willeth, he doeth what he pleaseth, and shall not be asked of his doings. It's also the underlying Arabic words here refer back to the B and the E again. He doth whatever he willeth through the power of the B and the E. If he be truly unconstrained. Someone read that for us, please.
If he be truly unconstrained, behold then how he hath sent down the manifestation of his cause, with verses which naught in the heavens or on the earth can withstand. Such hath been the manner of their revelation, that they have neither peer nor likeness in the world of being, as ye yourselves beheld and heard when once the day star of the world shone forth above the horizon of Iraq with manifest dominion. All things attain their consummation in the divine verses, and these indeed are the verses of God, the sovereign Lord, the help in peril, the all-glorious, the Almighty. Beyond this, he hath been made manifest as the bearer of a cause whose sovereign might is acknowledged by all created things, and this none can deny save the sinners and the ungodly. Say, O people, is it your wish to conceal the beauty of the sun behind the veils of your own selfish desires, or to prevent the Spirit from raising its melodies within this sanctified and luminous breast? Fear ye God, and contend not with him who representeth the Godhead. Dispute not with the one at whose bidding the letter B was created and joined with its mighty foundation. Believe in the messengers of God and his sovereign might, and in the self of God and his majesty. Follow not those who have repudiated what they had once believed, and who have sought for themselves a station after their own fancy. These truly are of the ungodly. Bear ye witness unto that whereunto God himself hath borne witness, that the company of his favored ones may be illumined by the words that issue from your lips. Say, we, verily, believe in that which was revealed unto the apostles of old, in that which hath been revealed by the power of truth unto Ali, and in that which is now being revealed from his throne of glory. Thus doth your Lord instruct you, as a sign of his favor and as a token of his grace. That is the letter E. Oh, that encompasseth all the worlds.
Mhm.
That is the letter E.
That's number 8.
Got it.
Note number 8 goes back to the
Yes.
dispute not with the one at whose bidding the letter B was created and joined with its mighty foundation. And the foundation is the E. This is the will of God with its, combined with this purpose, the male and female principle that gives birth to all else.
Which is left out of the third version, interestingly enough. That little portion about the letter E.
The meaning of it, that's a footnote, so
Yeah, okay.
it's in the I think isn't it in Summons as a footnote still?
Nope.
Yeah, it is.
Not in-
Yeah, it is number 5.
I think it's in version 2 online
It is online.
Yeah.
on the website.
The online version has it, or probably not, I don't know.
Let me check.
Yes.
If it's the second version, in any case, it's clear what we're talking about from the other uses of it. Yes.
You said the will of God being the E, and then you're connecting man and woman, or those thoughts.
We were talking about yesterday the B and the E correspond to the letter K and N in Arabic, which is kon. If you've ever been around Persians, you hear them saying to their kids, "Nakon, don't do that." You know, it's a common command form to do. So yesterday we were saying it by the commanding word of God. With one word, He brings creation to be. And that one word is the combination of those two letters. Then he explains that behind that are two universal forces, the will of God and the purpose of God. And those are the first 2 stages of 7 stages of creative being that are described in the writings of the Bab and are reviewed and examined in Nadir Saidi's book called Gate of the Heart. And this is not just in the writings of the Bab, it's in the writings of the Imam Jafar, the Imam Sadiq, and then also in the writings of Sheikh Ahmad and Sheikh Kazim, there's references to it, and finally in the writings of the Bab. Baha'u'llah then doesn't elaborate much on it, but confirms the truth of it in several tablets, and Abdul-Baha also says that all these stages of creative action are reflected in the microcosm, in the individual himself. So you have, if you want to understand what is this quality of will, he says will is that state of divine existence which has the potential to do anything it wants to do. It can take an action in any direction. Once it conceives of something it wants to do, it attaches to purpose, and then it has to manifest itself. But that quality of will never changes. It's always ready to do something else, to choose something else. Now think of the will that you have, the will to choose in different directions. It's always there with you. That choice, so to speak, and it comes back again to this free will, free choice that we have. Do we choose what God indicates, what the prophets indicate us to do in each stage with each phase of our life, or do we choose something else? And the outcome is the result of those choices, so to speak.
Mr. Dunbar?
Yeah.
It says, believe in the messengers of God and His sovereign might, and in the self of God. Can you enlighten us on what is meant by the self of God?
I think based on the prayers and meditations and other things, and these quote that we had yesterday, where I am the self of God. In other words, the manifestation of God is the self of God, but still we know that it's a reflected reality and not the inscrutable essence of God. But here's the only place we can identify God. We identify it with the manifestation of God, in the manifestation of God.
But what is the difference between, because Baha'u'llah is a messenger of God.
True.
So these two are it's calling attention to a difference between them, isn't it?
You know, oftentimes in both the Arabic and the Persian, there's a slight difference from that, the usage in English, where you have two things and they have to be distinct or they're in contrast with each other. The dawning point of his favors and the day spring of his revelation. In other words, sometimes there's an elaboration of the exact same thing, which means the same thing, rather than a contrasted meaning with it. I don't know if you think you watch the various, it's part of the elaboration of the language, the way it works out. That's my understanding of it. You can't always make a distinction between those. But certainly it is the same thing. Look how he says, go off a little bit here, but I think it's useful for us. In the book, in summons, you have the Suriy-i-Haykal and the Lohei-i-Haykal. And one of the questions that Baha'u'llah has been asked about is the soul. And if somebody can pull that up, we can read that line. I can paraphrase it, but I don't have it in front of me. Thank you. There's a key to the question that you're asking, I think, here. What do you have? Do you have a number for it? Suriy-i-Haykal 29.
As to that question regarding the soul, know that among the people there are numerous treaties and manifold views as to its stations. Among these are the soul of the kingdom, the soul of the dominion, the celestial soul, the divine soul, the sanctified soul, as well as the benevolent soul, the contented soul, the soul pleasing unto God, the inspired soul, the irascible soul, the sufficient soul. Every group has its own pronouncements concerning the soul, and we are disinclined to dwell upon the sayings of the past. Verily, with thy Lord is the knowledge of the former and latter generations.
That is in the nature of what I'm looking for, but there's one line here where it's in paragraph 35. Say, middle of the paragraph, say, spirit, mind, soul, and the powers of sight and hearing are but one single reality, which hath manifold expressions owing to the diversity of its instruments. As thou dost observe man's power to comprehend, move, speak, hear, and see, all derived from this sign of his Lord within him, it is single in its essence, yet manifold through the diversity of its instruments. This verily is a certain truth. For example, if it directeth its attention to the means of hearing, then hearing and its attributes become manifest. Likewise, if it directeth itself to the means of vision, a different effect and attribute appear. Reflect upon this subject, that thou mayest comprehend the true meaning of what hath been intended, and find thyself independent of the sayings of the people, and be of them that are well assured. Abdu'l-Baha says in another place, he said, if you observe hierarchy of reality at one level of existence, you can move this up and down the scale of life to discover other realities. For instance, he will give us examples from the mineral kingdom or from the vegetable kingdom, and then he'll bring it into a meaning that it has in the human kingdom. Now here we have a summary from Baha'u'llah about the human reality, where it's characterized in different ways depending on its function. Now let us move from the human reality, the human spirit, and move it up once we get to the level of the Holy Spirit. That is the reality of the manifestation of God. And we find that he is calling himself by all different titles and functions. And I think the same truth reflects there, that it depends on what he's doing, how he defines himself. In one sense, he's the will of God. In another, he's the love of God. In another, he's the cause of God. In another, he's what?
The self of God.
Holy Spirit, Word of God. All these titles refer to a single reality that is characterized in different ways depending on the instrument or function that it's acting through at the time. I think it helps so that we don't think that the Word of God is something different from the Holy Spirit, which is different from the will of God, and it becomes confusing. And I think that the key to that is this passage. So I would say self of God is certainly one of the realities, one of the dimensions of reality of the manifestation of God, and he's certainly at the same time he's the messenger of God. You know, that helps.
Could you comment, Hooper, on that phrase, the irascible soul? I love it.
Yeah,
Did it speak to you?
Yeah. It derives from the previous stage, the concupiscent soul. As far as I understand. That's the soul who's totally wedded to evil and doesn't realize it even, and just enjoys himself, okay? Or herself, God forbid. Yeah. And so then through the influence of the manifestation of God, a spark of reality flashes into that darkness and upsets and makes the soul irascible. It's no longer content with its lowly, filthy existence. It starts worrying about it. And this is not making him comfortable. And in the Quran, Muhammad says, and God will not swear by the irascible soul. Not quite cooked yet, you know. What's the next stage after that he mentions here is the inspired soul. Well, we would think, wow, the inspired soul, that must be something really exalted. But in the definitions of it within tablets of Baha'u'llah and Abdu'l-Bahá too, he talks about the soul that then becomes inspired with that which is good for it and that which is not good for it. There's enough influence from the Word of God, both as a text and as a reality in your own being, so that you say, this is the choice I should make here. This is very important. You know, there's a prayer that says, I know not that which hurteth me or harmeth me or helpeth me. There is a stage where we just don't quite, you know, we think, oh, that would be good to do. Not very helpful, really. So we've got to another stage where we know right away, you know, the hand goes near that and it's fire and you feel the heat and you say, well, the heat, this is not good. Move back. So, and then about 7 stages beyond that, elaborated by the Master, and in Islam it's there too. So you move through the approved soul and the inspired soul and the assured soul and the perfect soul, and finally you get to the soul of the kingdom. Well, so much for saying, whoa, see you in the kingdom. It's not quite that simple, I don't think, but in any case, I want to depress myself nor you, so we'll move on. Okay. Moving on, then the next reading is, O feet of this temple. But he has capitalized it, the translator, my goodness, after my speech about not capitalizing hands.
O feet of this temple, we verily have wrought you of iron. Stand firm with such constancy in the cause of your Lord as to cause the feet of every severed soul to be strengthened in the path of God, the Almighty, the All-Wise. Beware lest the storms of enmity and hatred or the blasts of the workers of iniquity cause you to stumble. Be immovable in the faith of God and waver not. We verily have called you forth by virtue of that name, which is the source of all steadfastness, and by the grace of each one of our most excellent names, as revealed unto all who are in heaven and on earth. Ere long shall we bring into being through you other feet, firm and steadfast, which shall walk unwaveringly in our path, even should they be assailed by hosts as formidable as the combined forces of the former and latter generations. In truth, we hold all grace in the hollow of our hand and bestow it as we please upon our favored servants. Time and again we have vouchsafed unto you our favors, that ye may offer such thanks unto your Lord as to cause the tongues of all created things to speak forth in praise of me, the all-merciful, the most compassionate. O living temple, arise to serve this cause through a might and a power born of us. Disclose then unto the servants of God all that the Spirit of God, the sovereign Lord, the incomparable, the all-glorious, the all-wise, hath imparted unto thee. Say, O people, will you turn away from him who is the eternal truth, and choose instead him who we have created out of a mere handful of clay? To do so is to inflict a grievous injustice upon yourselves, if ye be of them that reflect upon the verses of your Lord. Say, O people, cleanse your hearts and your eyes, that ye may recognize your Maker in this holy and luminous attire. Say, the celestial youth hath ascended the throne of glory, made manifest his independent sovereignty, and now voiceth, in the most sweet and wondrous accents, this call betwixt earth and heaven. O peoples of the earth, wherefore have ye disbelieved in your Lord, the all-merciful, and turned aside from him who is the beauty of the all-glorious? By the righteousness of God, this is his hidden secret, who hath risen from the dayspring of creation, and this is his cherished beauty, who hath shone forth above the horizon of this exalted station, invested with the sovereignty of God, the help in peril, the all-glorious, the all-subduing, the almighty.
Can you read that again?
What's that?
I asked if you could read that again.
Could you read that again? How about the announcement from the O peoples of the earth?
Last, the quote, last.
Quote? Okay. Say, the celestial youth hath ascended the throne of glory, made manifest his independent sovereignty, and now voiceth, in the most sweet and wondrous accents, this call betwixt earth and heaven. O peoples of the earth, wherefore have ye disbelieved in your Lord, the all-merciful, and turned aside from him who is the beauty of the all-glorious? By the righteousness of God, this is his hidden secret, who hath risen from the dayspring of creation, and this is his cherished beauty, who has shone forth above the horizon of this exalted station, invested with the sovereignty of God, the help in peril, the all-glorious, the all-subduing, the almighty.
Question. Back at paragraph 61. O feet of this temple, we verily have wrought you of iron. Does that refer at all to the vision in Revelation?
It may well, and there's also there are Old Testament quotations about the feet of iron of the vision of one of the lesser prophets that I don't have that in front of me. You could check it out.
In Revelation, there's that image of the coming one, I think, and the feet, but I don't remember if they were made of iron or copper or whatever.
Yeah.
And also, a question to whoever may know the answer. I understand that there is a Quranic and a biblical equivalent to the expression "say." Does anyone know what those are?
What's the expression?
Say. The preface
This is
exclamation that says
Gold.
say.
Gold. Quran begins with the same letter. Means say. Speak forth or recite.
Yeah. It's used in different ways. Sometimes God is telling Baha'u'llah to announce and say something. Sometimes it's Baha'u'llah telling his followers. You have to kind of look at the context. You can't tell from the command form whether it's singular or plural. So you need to guess it out each time, but it's definitely used as a term of mediation, so to speak. Sometimes in the Gleanings you'll find a passage where he says, "Oh, you followers of say," and in other words, what we should be saying when we're teaching the faith, announcing to the people. It has various meanings. I think there's a letter from Shoghi Effendi. I don't know if anybody's got Ocean online, they might find the meaning of say. I believe there's a short letter from him explaining.
And I thought the biblical "yea, verily" or something like that might be the same, or "in truth," but maybe no.
Well, the verily, we've also got that, of course, every place, but the direct command to open your mouth and speak, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a command form in Arabic.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
We're in the outline very nicely on the CC2. It says it gives us the choice between Baha'u'lláh and Yahya. I have to say that it's really wonderful because in reading that as an ignorant Westerner, I may not have come across the idea that whom I have created out of a mere handful of clay was Yahya.
Yeah, it's directly referenced to him.
Clay, you know, but so it's interesting if there's a background to that, like how does the handful of clay, is that well known to refer to Yahya?
It must be in the other tablets. I don't have any direct quote at hand, but it's clearly referenced to Yahya. He keeps coming back to that. You know, are you going to follow me or the truth, or are you going to follow this piece of dust that's been created here?
Yes. In the context, was this written right after Yahya had caused some?
Exactly.
suffering?
Yes, exactly.
Yes, that's pretty clear.
And the whole of this work, as you see, goes back and forth. He announces the coming of the new race of men and stuff, and then he goes back to recounting the shortcomings of Yahya and his actions and the sufferings that he's having. And then God, there's another say, you know, raise up your voice and speak about the wonders of this day. And so he moves off of that subject and comes back to the positive one. Then he goes back again and recounts. So little by little we get the episode. But in the end, the triumphal vision of the new day of God and the celestial heaven end the tablet. I hope we get that far. But
nice to see the manifestation can perseverate on some ills that he suffered, as well as the rest of us can as well, and keep being reminded to do that.
Yeah.
Raise that.
Yeah, no, it's not a denial of all evil, and you know, Shoghi Effendi's pretty sharp about the way he characterizes the enemies and the rulers, you know, inordinate and ruthless, and yeah.
Who's the celestial youth in this context?
That would be
Descendant.
the youth is a term originally used in the Quran for Joseph, but it also applies to the Bab, and the Bab applies it to Baha'u'llah, and Baha'u'llah applies it to himself, and he applies it to the Bab. And sometimes it's the Arabian youth, which is the same thing. I mean, the context of Iraq, they were speaking Arabic and revealing in Arabic, so. And it's the image of the beauty, the young beauty of Joseph, the idea of it. What I understand, but you go and check the different sources and you'll see, I think you'll see that confirmed.
I like the term "his hidden secret." I just
Yeah.
find that wonderful, and I haven't really seen it. It's just very.
This is his hidden secret, yes. This is amazing, you know, he has the hidden and the manifest, and the manifestation also has these two dimensions to him. One is very open and the other is... Again, conceive yourself as a cell in the body of the consciousness of Baha'u'llah. And that cell in that body is animated, vivified by the spirit of the whole body. So we influence each other too. We're here together, but we're all cells in one body. So there can be a collective response at times in community. This is the kind of communities we're building. We want to build communities that reflect that divine light. That acts, Shoghi Effendi says, as the sure magnet that attracts other souls to it. You know, okay, we do our best, and people have gone out and knocked on doors, and the reality of that is not, it doesn't have to be done every place, but some places there's no other choice. You go to a little village of huts and stuff, and you visit people in their homes, and they come out and you talk to them and so on. There's a letter from Shoghi Effendi. He talks about the importance of living the Baha'i life. He said, if you acquire the Baha'i attributes and live the Baha'i life, he said, then Baha'u'llah will send souls to you. Just completely reverses this thing of going out and searching for waiting souls. And he says, I'm paraphrasing it, but he says, Baha'u'llah will send waiting souls to you. The fast-tracking the cause forward is to find waiting souls and bring them into the cause, not take endless time with people who are arguing and fussing about things. We want souls that look at you right between the eyes and they say, why didn't you tell me this before? Obviously, this is true. This is it. I know this. I recognize immediately. And we've all met souls like that. Probably most of you in the room are that kind of soul. I don't know how much you had to fuss.
I also love that term, hidden secret, the idea of the two opposing forces, like what was being spoken of, like it's so, in just one phrase, infinite meanings that's being given, and then all that I cannot absorb simultaneously. It's just the divine theater.
Herbert, could you comment on one other thing? I've been reading about this lately and pondering it. Mirza Aya's followers, especially the three that were, there in Akká in the early part of that period, apparently got possession of several tablets of Baha'u'llah and wrote some seditious additions to those tablets, and then spread them around saying that Baha'u'llah had written them, and etc. When you were on the house, did you ever see the text of any of those? What did they do? I've never seen that described.
No, I've seen a reference to that somewhere, but I've never seen what actually
I'm really curious.
Consisted of.
Yeah. Apparently in a couple of them there were added sentences, at the end of the tablet that were made to be spread around to the authorities in the Ottoman government and
mislead the friends and the Nalbais too.
Yeah.
Interesting. Area to study, but I don't know about it. Yes?
Where it says this is his hidden secret, isn't that an exposition where he's exposing a secret? In other words, as part of unveiling the truth that has not been exposed in past dispensations.
Yeah, usually these things are terms that have been used in former holy books. And then he identifies, he keeps bringing them up and identifying with them. I am the hidden treasure. Okay, that was one of the references. So hidden treasure would be like the hidden secret. I think another must be the title. I don't know what the title is here in Arabic. We'd have to look that up and see whether it has precedence.
Your wife.
Yes.
I'm just thinking about the question of waiting souls and how to refine your character so that they will come to you. I think you're not necessarily knocking on doors, but participating in the life of the community and doing whatever the House of Justice is asking us to do, I think brings us so many tests with each other that takes us to our prayer book and refines our character and knocks the rough edges off. So I think that's an important part of the
growing process.
Getting the waiting souls to come to us.
Yeah.
Perhaps we all
Just saying.
No, Bill Sears used to say, pray every morning that you can find, you will run across waiting souls. And then he says, and also add to the prayer that you might recognize them when you to say, oh, they're not going to be interested. Okay, shall we go on with reading, please?
O temple of holiness, we verily have cleansed thy breast from the whisperings of the people, and sanctify it from earthly illusions, that the light of my beauty may appear therein, and be reflected in the mirrors of all the worlds. Thus have we singled thee out above all that hath been created in the heavens and on the earth, and above all that hath been decreed in the realms of revelation and creation, and chosen thee for our own self. This is but an evidence of the bounty which God hath vouchsafed unto thee, a bounty which shall last until the day that hath no end in this contingent world. It shall endure so long as God, the supreme King, the help in peril, the mighty, the wise, shall endure. For the day of God is none other but his own self, who hath appeared with the power of truth. This is the day that shall not be followed by night, nor shall it be bounded by any praise, would that ye might understand.
I think it's interesting how it goes from the day and his own self. There's shifting language there between an idea and then.
Can you speak up a little bit? It's hard to hear you.
I think it's interesting how it went from saying the day of God is none other but his own self.
Mm-hmm.
Goes from the day to the self, which sounds initially, I guess in a casual, normal, normal context, those are different types of nouns.
Yeah. This is amazing. You keep talking about the day of God, the greatness of the day of God, and he's saying he's the day of God.
It's not a period of time,
but the appearance of the Son of Truth reflected amongst us. Yeah. And it's not going to be followed by night. I have a letter here from the Guardian about that.
Well, if it's not a period of time, then that's easier to see that it won't be followed by night.
In a letter written on behalf of the Guardian, found on page 34 of Directives from the Guardian, it stated, "This is what is meant by this is the day which will not be followed by night. In this dispensation, divine guidance flows on to us in this world and after the Prophet's ascension, to first the Master and then the Guardians. If a person can accept Baha'u'llah's function, it should not present any difficulty to them to also accept what he has ordained in a divinely guided individual in matters pertaining to the faith." You get that far, and then you have the statements by these divinely guided individuals that the House of Justice is the source of guidance. And Shogi Effendi's for instance, made the crusade. He said the next becoming stages of the unfoldment of the divine plan will be elaborated by the House of Justice. It didn't exist yet, but it came into being, and indeed the House of Justice then designed the 9-year plan and the successive plans that we've been following.
What is it that flows from Baha'u'llah, what quotation you just read? What flows?
If a person can accept Baha'u'llah's function, that's what... in this dispensation, divine guidance flows onto us in this world and after the Prophet's ascension, through first the Master and then the Guardians. If a person can accept Baha'u'llah's function, it should not present any difficulty to them to also accept that he has ordained in a divinely guided individual what he has ordained in a divinely guided individual in matters pertaining to faith.
Would it also mean that this day that is not followed by night, that this dispensation is the culmination and that mankind will never regress again to the points that we were in previously, where we needed a new prophet of God to bring us out of the depths of, where mankind ultimately goes to after a prophet's been gone for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
But now we've progressed past that point, or is this just a huge cycle that eventually it will again cycle
Back again. It's just
back?
that the Guardian says in letters, we won't go down to the degradation that we went before. but we'll run out of impetus to move forward. So there's a certain amount of divine energy which is released with the coming of the manifestation. That's renewed from age to age, and we move on with it. But the impulse and the authority of Baha'u'llah's words seems to imply that future prophets will derive their spiritual guidance from Baha'u'llah's teachings, as well as direct from God, but they will comment, for example.
Well, since we have the House of Justice and they're infallible, it seems like they would be able to guide mankind through any and all, stages.
They can, but if we reach a place where we begin, rather than ascending, leveling off in our progress, not dropping back, but leveling off, then it requires the...
Okay, and then you think about, well, now that we've united the world, we go on and unite the universe. So we do drop back down. Maybe
that might take a couple millenniums before we and we may not be the ones to go on and unite it. They may come to us, so I don't know.
Wow, please.
I have been struggling with a couple of things. Thinking about the depth of the study that we've been doing in the last day and today, and the words that are used, and the level of comprehension and also education that one must have to understand that the texts that we're reading require also study of the previous holy writings. And I keep thinking about my family, and I keep thinking about villages where I grew up, and the indigenous, and also the people that I work with today, and many migrants that come from very small villages in Central America and Mexico. And I keep thinking, well, I kept asking myself, so how does this translate into action? Because it feels so overwhelming to think that how do I translate this beauty, this amazing understanding that I am coming to a small village where education especially for girls wasn't really it wasn't really a priority, even in my family. And you just answered that, and I just feel just so you said something that really, and I know where it comes from. I know it doesn't probably come from you directly, but you talk about the divine assistance that comes when you come to teach someone the faith. And that, I kept thinking earlier in the last few hours, but this requires education. This requires I'm talking about academics, going to college to be able to read and understand. And you just, when you read that letter from Shoghi Effendi about the divine assistance when you knock on a door, when you talk to a person, and the help that you get when you open yourself up, and then it simplifies it, and it makes it, to me, it answers the question, and I understand now why so many people go to so many faraway places and are so successful at sharing, our faith. And so my point, I think, is about, just maybe to make it a little more clear about what I'm talking about, is when I went to junior college and I had a choice to take Shakespeare, and I saw it as I could not do that. I mean, I'm barely speaking English and learning a second language in college, and why would I go into a class where Shakespeare just seemed unattainable to me? But the instructor put it in such terms of real life that the play of King Lear became alive to me as, you know, how my father spoke to us, the girls, in terms of, you know, the boys can go to college, you will marry and you will be taken care of, you don't need to think about that. And just how, you know, King Lear talks about the 3 daughters and how the one that he, and I can't recall exactly, but the just how that play came to life, and I was able to reach that point in understanding that nothing is impossible, that you cannot see those obstacles as, you know, I cannot, you know, get to that point of understanding this text. And so I guess that's going around a few times to try to explain that I feel that we all have the capacity, and so I just been thinking a lot about, you know, the people that I work with, my family, my own family, and how do I speak about the Baha'i faith in a way that doesn't come from me, but comes from the divine understanding.
Oh, you have the advantage, of course, of you've taken in a lot of the teachings already. And I think God judges our actions in teaching is the intention, the sincerity and intention of it. And that's also, we know that people have all been created with the capacity to recognize the voice of God, the voice of Baha'u'llah. They may not recognize, but they have the capacity. How can they be judged? If they hear and they don't respond, how can they be judged? So I know in Nicaragua, for example, one of the men we taught the faith there to was very enthusiastic about the cause, but he had little or no education. He could hardly read. He went on and he learned to, as an adult, to read and become a very deepened believer. But at the time, he didn't. And he would go around and he was so excited about the faith. He says, "There's a new religion." He said, "It's wonderful. You got to know about this." And they said, "What's the name of it?" I can't remember the name of it. Well, who was the prophet? I can't remember his name either. He's great. He's wonderful. And I can take you to people who can tell you all these things. All right, that was the way he did, and he'd bring people. Say, what in the world's he talking about? You know. Dr. Muhajir was teaching in the Mentawai Islands, and the census takers went there after he'd been there, and he was away, as I had he was off somewhere else, but wasn't there at the time, and they went and they said, "Okay, so how many Muslims do you have in this village?" And they say, we're following a new religion. And they said, what religion is that? They said, doctor's religion. And they said, and who was the prophet of that religion? And he said, doctor's prophet. So Dr. Muhajir got back there and they told him this story. So, you know, he worked a lot on getting the names of the founder and the name of the faith into their consciousness. But they become Baha'is in one visit, and the names are not easy. I remember I was calling this one that and that one this, and when I first heard of it, it takes the time. But the point is that we're also judged in accordance with what we've been given, you know. And we have the advantages of literacy and education of all sorts. Okay, some of the things we've acquired are veils. We have to lift those, we have to get rid of them. But we have the means of doing it. If you look in the Deepening compilation of that the House of Justice prepared back in the 80s, and they republished it in the 90s again, in the section on Abdu'l-Baha, there's a number of unpublished tablets at the beginning, all of which center on proofs. You have to acquire the proofs. To make a great effort to acquire the proofs from the writings and be able to speak about them. Of course, Abdu'l-Baha does this in all of his talks are based on a series of, makes logical points and builds bridges with people, you know. Beyond that, we have the great, the command of Baha'u'llah. I think sometimes we miss out. There's a tablet quoted in the Greens. He says you should proclaim the faith to everyone. And whoever responds, teach them. It's interesting. One is announce the existence, that such a thing exists. There's a new messenger from God. Baha'u'llah has come. He's given the guidance to mankind. That's what we need right now. But we need people to look into it and recognize it, accept it, or not. As they say, no, I'm not interested in that. Why? What can you do? He says, that's curious. I never heard of that. What does he say? You know, okay, so you've got to start. But the proofs, the greatest means of recognizing the faith, one is that there is a capacity in the individual to do so, but the instrument for that is thought, reason, understanding, rationality. How could, you know, Baha'u'lláh reasons people. How can you accept that? This is because, well, the Bible tells me so. This is this acquired knowledge that isn't a firm foundation, you know. And we have to help people rethink the things, work them through it. And of course we're doing that, well, that's what we're doing this weekend in a sense, is we're remeasuring a number of points that are related to our connections to the cause. Please.
There's a great book out, Proofs of Baha'u'llah. I like that book a lot.
Yes, that's a lovely book. Very useful. Proofs of Baha'u'llah. Please.
I can also relate to what you were saying and what Terence was saying also earlier. Growing up in Ethiopia, a lot of times you have a lot of people who believe just because, you know, it's in the family. The majority are Orthodox Christians, and they just believe because that's what their parents were and their great-grandparents were, and for them the thought of investigating or even like questioning the Bible or even what the priest is saying is almost like a big taboo. You don't ask the priest why.
Yeah.
You don't ask the priest to explain to you a concept. So they just blindly follow. So the minute you have this conversation about with them and start going on about the proofs and, you know, try to understand, try to actually not even teach them about the faith, but like even explain some of the concepts in the Bible, for them it's always like, oh my goodness, how could you? And I've seen it in my own family where, you know, it'd be like some holy day and then we're all gathered there and the priest comes and it's like sprinkling the holy water and we're like, no, we don't need it. And everybody looks at you like, why? And then you kind of ask them like, why do you think he does it? Like, what's the significance of holy water to you? And they're like, I don't know, that's what's been done all the time. So, but knowing the proofs really helps in terms of like attracting your souls that are searching. And one of the great books that we always used in Deepening back there in Ethiopia was Thief in the Night, and Baha'u'llah in the New Era has these wonderful proofs that really helps us, that puts all that together for us in one place that we can use, especially with dominant Christian communities.
Good. Someone over here, I think there was a hand in there. No? Shall we go on with the text then? What time are we at?
It is 8 minutes till the break.
Okay. So we've seen this thing about He is the day of God. That's a very interesting to think of in other quotations as well. And this shall not be followed by night. I mentioned yesterday one of the things that Abdullah says, there's no night in the sun. The sun is always the sun. It's we who are going around in black and white and changing our rhythms and things. And the implications are there's a sun of truth and there is a reality. The central orb of the universe. Do you remember the reference in the Ghaneh to that? Very interesting. That we are an emanation of this divine center, this celestial center, which is unknowable, but is the sustenance. And so, though He's unknowable, He's not at all remote. He's omnipresent. He's the sustainer. He's the cause of the beating of that vein of yours. So there's an immediacy of Him, though He is invisible, and He's given us the manifestations to tell us that, so to speak. O breast of this temple, please.
O breast of this temple, we verily have caused all things to mirror forth thy reality,
and made thee as a mirror of our own self. Shed then upon the breasts of all created beings the splendors of the light of thy Lord, that they may be freed from all illusions and limitations. Thus hath the day star of wisdom shone forth above the horizon of the pen of the eternal King. Blessed are those who perceive it. Through thee have we created other sanctified breaths, and unto thee shall we cause them to return, as a token of our grace unto thee and unto our favored servants. Ere long we shall bring into being through thee men with sanctified and illumined breasts, who will testify to naught save thy beauty, and show forth naught but the resplendent light of thy countenance. These shall in truth be the mirrors of thy name amidst all created things.
Is the change from my to thy a translation thing, or?
Because the final has mine.
Yeah, this is this difference between the second and third versions for some reason.
It's just the difference between the versions.
Oh, okay.
In the note that David forwarded to us about the different versions, there's also a link there which shows you all the difference between the second and third versions, the variations that are there, so you can see them if you want
I
to
was
look.
just wondering if it was a misreading or one of the translations.
No, it seems I'm seeing things here that people are not reading, and they're reading things that I don't see here. I figured you were all, either being patient with the reader or understanding that there were two versions that we're going through here. But they're pretty close. I mean, they're basically the same things being said. Okay, shall we go on?
O temple of holiness, we verily have made thine inmost heart the treasury of all the knowledge of past and future ages, and the dawning place of our own knowledge, which we have ordained for the dwellers of earth and heaven, that all creation may partake of the outpourings of thy grace, and may attain through the wonders of thy knowledge unto the recognition of God, the exalted, the powerful, the great. In truth, that knowledge which belongeth unto mine own essence is such as none hath ever attained or will ever grasp, nor shall any heart be capable of bearing its weight. Were we to disclose but a single word of this knowledge, the hearts of all men would be filled with consternation, the foundations of all things would crumble into ruin, and the feet of even the wisest among men would be made to slip. Within the treasury of our wisdom there lieth unrevealed a knowledge, one word of which, if we chose to divulge it to mankind, would cause every human being to recognize the manifestation of God and to acknowledge his omniscience, would enable everyone to discover the secrets of all the sciences, and to attain so high a station as to find himself wholly independent of all past and future learning. Other knowledges we do as well possess, not a single letter of which we can disclose, nor do we find humanity able to hear even the barest reference to their meaning. Thus have we informed you of the knowledge of God, the all-knowing, the all-wise. Were we to find worthy vessels, we would deposit within them the treasures of hidden meanings and impart unto them a knowledge, one letter of which would encompass all created things.
Hey.
Have you become the deposit of hidden treasures? Maybe you're not one of those worthy vessels. I don't know. You can ask yourself all the time why I don't understand some of these things. In paragraph 65, he talks about that knowledge which belongeth unto mine own essence is such as none hath ever attained or will ever grasp. So in a sense, the essence of the manifestation is the essence of divinity, the essence of God himself, but a reflected mode. so that, you've got this infinite reflection of the invisible divine essence appearing in these manifestations of God throughout the universe. There's some places where reference to says there's no number to the manifestations of God that have appeared in the universe. I think this helps us a little bit to get over our attachment to former revelations that people have. This is going to kind of blow the whole thing open. And science, by leading the way and talking about these endless galaxies and so on, it's starting to spark our mind. They say there's a lot of planets there with the same conditions that we have here, and that would be an infinite number. As long as the universe is infinite, we can't catch up with those numbers.
Of interest is a study looking up and researching the writings for mention of the innermost essence of all created things. So the relationship between that essence and the essence of creation, and then the beings of which we are, and then the innermost essence of the divinity is an interesting search. I'm trying. There are a lot needs to be found, and more research needs to be done about that relationship of innermost essence.
We find this challenge. We can't understand the essence of God. Next thing he tells you can't understand the essence of the manifestation of God. You can't figure him out either. Next thing he says, your own soul is beyond your comprehension and understanding as well. So,
at this time,
I look and I say, well, my fingernails are dirty. I can figure that out. But sometimes you get a little bit frustrated. What level of understanding we can reflect.
On that note, we'll take a break, 15 minutes, and then we'll reassemble.